Hi folks, I'm pro saxophonist Jamie Anderson. You're watching Get Your Sax Together, and on this week's show I'm going to show you how to improvise better solos without learning a single new scale or chord. This week's lesson is going to build on last week's lesson, so if you're a complete novice, beginner improviser, make sure you check out last week's lesson first. But we're going to take that one scale that we learned from last week. I might add in one note and make it a blues scale, but we'll come to that in a minute. And I'm going to show you how to make a meaningful, great sounding solo without learning a whole load more theory and harmony that you don't need to know yet. But just before we get into all that, as I mentioned last week, all this stuff is going to be contained in my new course, which is called Improvisation Mastery, and I am super excited about this one, guys. This is going to be everything you need to know to take your improvisation from wherever you are to wherever you want to go. The sky's the limit. So watch out for that. I'm working hard on that course right now. It's not out yet, so don't panic, but it will be available. Make sure you're on my mailing list and you'll find out exactly when that is going to be available for you to buy. And in the meantime, of course, you can check out my Saxophone Success Masterclass using the URL there. That will get you a load of great information on putting together a really effective practice routine. There's some stuff on improvising in there. There's stuff about gear, technique, sound, everything. That's an awesome free gift. So go and check out that free masterclass. Right, let's get on with today's lesson. Just before we crack into the lesson, there's a couple of resources I would like to point you towards. The first is my video on pentatonics, and the second is my video on the blues. These two lessons will give you the backbone for today's lesson. It'll tell you all about pentatonic scales, and it'll tell you all about the blues scale. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in one more note to the 5 notes that you already know from last week. If you're in tenor, we're going to add in a D flat. So your new scale for tenor is going to be G, B flat, C, D flat or C sharp, D and F. That's the G minor blues scale. But remember what I taught you last week. You center on the G and you pivot up and down around those notes. For alto, your new scale is going to be a D minor blues scale. That's D, F, G, G sharp or A flat, A and C. And again, like I said, you spend all your time on the home note, then you pivot up and down. Remember that the home note is more important. Now, a word of caution on that new note that I've just taught you. That's the blue note is called. It's not really a specific pitch. It's more a vocal intonation, a vocal bend that's halfway between notes. You don't want to spend too much time on that note. You want to just hit the blues note and get away from it, or bend it into the next note. That's the way to use the blues note. On to our first technique. Now, what do you think the most important thing to improve your improvisation is going to be, guys? Shout at the screen right now. So if you said rhythm, you are completely correct. Everyone's rhythm is their weakest suit when it comes to improvisation. So the first way you can improve your solos without learning a whole new load of theory and scales is to play with better rhythm. So what do I mean by that? Number one, make sure everything you play is locked into the grid, locked into the groove of the song. That's the most important thing. The second thing that a lot of people do when they're beginning their improvising journey, they tend to meander a lot and play long notes because they're kind of panicking. They just can't stop playing. But if you listen to your favourite players, many times their phrases will end in short notes. Quite often a long and a short. Da-da. So leave more space for one thing. You know, as Miles Davis famously said to John Coltrane, take the horn out of your mouth. So leave a bit more space in your solos. Let the music breathe. End your phrases with short notes and keep yourself really locked into that groove. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to demonstrate this with the same backing track as last week. The first half is going to be my impression of what a beginner improviser tends to sound like. There's no set rules. The second half is going to be demonstrating how you can improve on that. Incidentally, on today's lesson, I'm going to do all the demonstrating as you listen to the examples, and then at the end, I'm going to give you that 32 bar backing track so you can try and put together all these techniques that I'm about to show you. So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The second way that you can improvise much better solos without learning any more chords and scales is by using musical motifs. Now this is going to give your solos a real sense of logic. It's really going to make it sound like you know what you're doing if you do this technique. So it's quite simple. You're going to play something short, a little short musical statement, 3-4 notes, whatever you like. Then you're going to play it again just to reinforce that point. Then you can do a variation on it, or you can do something that contrasts with it. You can do another theme. So if we call the first little motif A, you might play A, then play that A motif again. Then you play B. Then you might go back to the A. Then you might play a C motif, which is a slight variation on that again. So you can play with these short little musical phrases, and you can hear all the best players doing this. Kenny Garrett does it, John Coltrane, countless players. And it really gives your solo a sense of cohesion. It gives your lines that lovely, melodic and interesting character that makes it sound like you really know what you're doing. So all you're going to do is you're going to play a short thing, then you're going to repeat it. Now, you have to play something nice and rhythmic, otherwise you won't be able to repeat it. So if you just skim around and play something very vague, it's not going to work. So that's the trick here. Play something very positive, in the groove, play it again, do a variation, move it around, maybe make it longer, change the notes, answer yourself. It's like, I call it having a conversation with yourself. You ask the question, you answer the question, you ask another question, you answer that question, and you keep this little dialogue going between your musical phrases. So here we go. I'm going to demonstrate this over a 16-bar groove, just using that same scale that we're going to keep using for all these examples, which is your G minor blues scale for tenor, D minor blues scale for alto. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The third thing, which is really gonna make your solo sound better without learning a whole bunch of new theory and knowledge, is by learning the language of the genre that you're in. Now, let's just say for the moment that we're in a kind of bluesy, funky type genre, quite a universal genre. What I need to do to sound better, using exactly the same notes I'm already using, is to learn some great phrases from some great players and put them in the right key for my scale, and then start to incorporate that language into my playing. Do you remember last time I said that when you learn a language, when a baby learns a language, they absorb, they copy, they mimic all the phrases, and then they recombine them in their own creative way. And that's what you're going to do with your solo. So the secret here is building up, obviously, a bank of fantastic language. Fantastic, you might call it licks. You might call it key phrases. I've got a whole series on transcription, which I will link on the card above, which will get you started with transcribing. And just take a couple of short phrases, learn them in the key that you're doing, which is D minor for alto, G minor for tenor, and you'll get to incorporate these into your solos. Now, if you go to my my great video on the blues, you'll see that there's a selection, I think it's 5 licks, I can't remember, 5 fantastic blues licks that I took from a whole variety of different people, different players. You can combine them into one solo. So be like a magpie, gather these fantastic phrases and then put them into your own playing. It'll sound a little bit contrived at first, but once you've done this hundreds of times, you'll really get a feel for the language and feel of the genre of music that you're in, and you'll sound so convincing. It's all very well giving somebody a set of scales or one scale to improvise on, but that's not going to guarantee you any success whatsoever, because you don't know how to use those notes to sound great. So I can use the same blues scale and sound fantastic. You can use exactly the same notes and sound, you know, like you don't know what you're doing. So the devil's in the detail with this, and the detail is learning some licks from your favorite players. So I did this in a lesson with one of my students just recently. I can't do it because I don't want to get a copyright strike on the video, but I went to a Dave Sanborn solo, Grover Washington, I can't remember what it was. I just grabbed a few of their licks, put them in the key that we're playing in, and it sounds fantastic. So here's a demonstration of taking some language and putting it into your solos. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth and final tip for today's lesson is how to build a solo, how to tell a story with your solo. If you just meander around in the same intensity level for the whole thing, it starts to get a little bit boring for your listener. And for you probably as well. I know a lot of people are frustrated, they keep noodling and it sounds like they're just arpeggiating chords and they're playing like a technical exercise and they're not really expressing themselves or telling a story with their solos. And this is a great way to start to learn how to do it. So you're going to start on a low dynamic. In other words, you play quite quietly. You're going to use a rhythmically spare technique. So you're going to play short rhythms and leave plenty of space. And you're going to play in the low register of the horn. So you're going to manipulate these three things: the register of the horn that you're playing, the range, how high the notes are. You're going to manipulate the rhythm, how often you play notes and how fast the notes are, and the dynamic. Now, the fourth thing that you can throw in there as well is expression like growling or vibrato, but I'll just let you do that naturally. But remember that you can add intensity with growls and effects and things like that. So we're just going to focus on these three. So start off low range, long notes, lots of space, and nice and quiet. Then as the solo starts to develop, you can start making your rhythms a bit more punchy, go slightly higher in your range, start blowing to a good sort of forte, normal improvising level volume. Then as you start to hit that climax peak, I want you to build up the volume. I want you to start blowing as loud as you can, start going up, and you want to hit that climax note, however high it is for you. It might be altissimo, might just be a palm key, it doesn't matter. You're going to hit that note, and at the climax, you're going to hold that note. And that is going to be the peak of your solo. And then over the sort of 4 or 8 bars, you're just going to tail it back down. That's going to give you this beautiful bridge structure to your solo where you start here, you take people with you, you build up to that climax, and then you let people down gently, and you maybe hand off to the next solo if you're playing with a live band. That's going to give your solos this beautiful arc, and it really feels like you're going to be telling a story. Now, you might not want to do that shape every solo. That's absolutely fine. I'm just giving you somewhere to start. And you might think it's cheesy. I'll just hit a high note. That's really cheesy. Yeah, sure. But it's going to give you the consciousness to focus on this as something to do in your solos without learning a load of new licks. And it's going to give your solo that direction, that real sense of focus. And your listener is going to be transported with you as you take them on that journey. So here's a little example of building a solo, hitting that climax, and then bringing it back down again. Now, obviously, I'm using a backing track. If you're playing with a live band, then that band is going to go with you. They're going to feel that energy, and they're going to play right to that peak. And as a rhythm section player, they're really going to appreciate it if you hit some long notes. Like I said, hit that big climax long note. The band can really start grooving behind you when you hit that high note. So here's an example of shaping your solo, telling a story with your music, which is what it's all about after all. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now it's your turn. I'm going to let the backing track run for you, and you can practice. Maybe do them one at a time, just so it's not too overwhelming. So remember the 4 techniques that you're going to use to improvise much better solos. Number 1 is rhythm. Number 2 is using short musical motifs. Number 3 is incorporating some jazz language. Learn some licks and start to build it into your playing to build authority in your genre. And number 4 is creating an energetic arc for your solo to take the audience with you on a journey. So tell a story with your solo. That is the 4 techniques. You might want to practice them one at a time, or you might just want to steam in and have a go and see what happens. So here's the backing track going to run for you. Same scale, remember, for tenor, your notes are G minor, blues scale, which is G, B flat, C, C sharp, D, F. And for alto, you're in a D minor blues scale, D, F, G, G sharp, A, and C. Hope you have a lot of fun, and keep working on this as many times as you need to replay this backing track until you feel comfortable with these concepts, and your solos will start to sound much more fantastic, guys. Okay, have fun. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's it for this week. I hope you got a lot of value out of this lesson, showing you how to play better solos without learning a load of new harmony theory. I know that a lot of improvisers can improvise with a pentatonic scale. They're maybe not so comfortable going the full Monty and improvising on chord changes, but how you use that one scale is going to really transform how good your solos are. So I hope today it really helped. As I mentioned earlier, keep your eyes open for Improvisation Mastery, which is coming in the next couple of months. I'm aiming for June. So if you're watching this in the future, it might already be out. Who knows? That's going to be a fantastic course to help you, whatever level of improvising you're at. And you know what I'm like, you know what my courses are like. It's going to be super structured, simple steps to take you all the way to get that transformation that you're looking for. Of course, in the meantime, you can check out my Saxophone Success Masterclass. And until next week, which is going to be a video for slightly more advanced improvisers, we're going to start getting into chord changes, and I'm going to show you how you can create a beautiful, smooth, interesting line that connects those chords and doesn't sound like you're going up and down exercises all the time. So that's going to be next week. That's a slightly more advanced one. In the meantime, you know what I'm going to say. Practice hard, practice smart, and enjoy your music. See you later. Hi, I'm pro saxophonist Jamie Anderson. You're watching Get Your Sax Together, and on this week's show, I'm going to show you how to improvise. There's a fly. Damn fly.